week that proved the UFC's biggest stars and rivals are all circling the same target, and not one of them is waiting for Dana White's permission.
A little bit of a fuck you to the TKO group.
Islam Makhachev's camp announced his next fight as a done deal for July, and Dana jumped on social media to call that claim false. Ronda Rousey described her surprise AEW debut as a direct middle finger to TKO, and Jake Paul stood at a podium in Los Angeles and told the world the UFC is dying. Tomorrow, Adesanya steps into the cage in Seattle with his legacy hanging over every exchange, but today, we're covering everything that happened around it, so let's get into all of it. November 2025 was the last time anyone saw Islam Makhachev fight, when he captured the welterweight title from Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322. And the question of when he returns just turned into a public disagreement between his own manager and the head of the company. Ali Abdelaziz went on TMZ on March 25th and laid the whole thing out. Islam got offered a different fight at welterweight to be the main event, and Islam said, "Hey, let's do this in July. He has some stuff going on. Dana spoke about it. But I can tell you this, if this fight was offered in June and Islam even had one leg, he would have taken the fight. But in a way, Islam already have a fight in the summer. He has a welterweight number one contender match against someone. It's a done deal already, and the UFC will announce it probably soon." A done deal against the number one contender at welterweight, scheduled for International Fight Week in July. And that date matters because McGregor's targeted return lands on the very same weekend, which would make this one of the most stacked fight weeks in UFC history. But that version of the story didn't even survive 24 hours. Dana White shut it down with 3 words on social media. Not true, it's August. So now the welterweight champion's manager is publicly calling it a done deal for July, while the UFC's CEO is publicly calling it false and pointing to August. Dana has been citing a hand injury as the reason behind Makhachev's absence, and then Makhachev responded by posting footage of himself blasting a heavy bag at full power, which didn't exactly make the injury explanation look very convincing. No opponent's name has dropped yet, but Ian Machado Gary at 17-1 and ranked number 2 in the division looks like the clearest option. Michael Morales is 19-0 after stopping Sean Brady in the first round at UFC 322. Della Maddalena still holds the number 1 ranking, but he already lost the belt to Makhachev and fights Carlos Prates on May 2nd in Perth. What carries the most weight from Abdelaziz's interview is what he revealed about the Topuria superfight and just how quickly the whole thing fell apart. His exact words, "I got called about Ilya to fight Islam. It was the middle of the day, Islam was sleeping, and I was excited about it. And then I got called back. They said, never mind, the fight is not gonna happen," before I even talked with Islam. The biggest fight the UFC could possibly make right now got offered, and then snatched back before one of the 2 fighters even woke up from a nap. Abdelaziz also made his position crystal clear on why that matchup has to happen eventually. "I don't blame anyone for trying to make the most money they can, because I believe Ilya and Islam is the biggest fight the UFC can make. I think this fight should happen this year." Whether Makhachev returns in July or August, the comeback looks locked in. The only real question is whether the UFC turns it into a huge International Fight Week moment alongside McGregor, or moves it to a quieter date where nobody else can steal the spotlight. And right now, Abdelaziz and Dana are clearly not on the same page.
I've never been to an AEW pay-per-view, so I don't really know what to expect so much, but I'm thinking like a less restrictive, more adult version of WWE, which sounds like a good time. Those are all very good descriptions, I feel. So, yeah. And it's kind of a cool little bit of a fuck you to the TKO group, which is kind of funny because WWE is on Netflix, but I kind of figured it'd be easier to ask for forgiveness instead of permission on this one. And then, like, I'm promoting your show. It's fine. We didn't advertise it. It's not like we boosted the ratings of it, so it should be fine.
TKO owns both W. Tony Khan addressed it in the post-show scrum, telling reporters, Ronda is a really good friend of Marina Shafir, and Marina brought her in as backup. Ronda's always been very good to me. She's always welcome here in AEW anytime. Every report since then makes it sound like this was a one-time appearance, something meant to back Shafir and build hype for the Carano fight on May 16th. Rousey hasn't signed with AEW, but that doesn't really change the message. Her last MMA fight was way back in December 2016 against Amanda Nunes, almost 9.5 years ago. And right now, everything Rousey is doing feels like part of a bigger play to position herself above any one promotion. And that's exactly what makes her a problem for the UFC's hold on the sport. Jake Paul went full scorched earth at the Rousey vs. Carano press conference on March 10th at the Intuit Dome, and the quotes from that afternoon are still making the rounds 2 weeks later because of how direct they were. Paul told the room flat out, MMA is in a weird position right now. It's the Wild West, and I believe we have a massive opportunity here to disrupt the whole space and to put fighters first, get them the pay they deserve, the platform they deserve, because I believe the UFC is dying and MVP is here to take over. He then went straight at the White House card. I think the White House itself will be the star. I was disappointed by the card. I think a lot of fans were too, just because the expectations got so high. Honestly, if they hadn't been hyping it for that long, maybe if they had just dropped it out of nowhere, people would have been happy. But they made it sound like it was going to be the greatest card of all time, and it just isn't. Paul also pointed to what he thinks is the UFC's core problem. I think it's been hard for them to create stars, and to make the fights they actually want with how little they're willing to spend. So they're kind of stuck in this bottleneck, and I think that's why we've been getting fights people aren't super excited about, while the biggest stars in the sport, like Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, aren't fighting with any real consistency. Whether people take Jake Paul seriously as a combat sports figure or not, what he described is pretty much exactly what we've been watching play out for months now. Jones isn't fighting. McGregor hasn't fought in 5 years. Makhachev's camp and Dana still can't even agree on a return date, and the White House card got backlash from fans the minute it dropped. Paul also made it sound like MMA isn't a question of intention anymore, just timing. 100% I'll do MMA at some point. For my first fight, it'd probably have to be against somebody around my own weight. He even threw out the idea of a fight with Francis Ngannou, keeping it simple. I think me versus Francis would be massive. The Netflix card on May 16th already has Rousey versus Carano, Ngannou versus Lins, Diaz versus Perry, plus an undercard that's getting deeper with real names on it. And if that event delivers, then suddenly what Paul said doesn't sound like trash talk anymore, it sounds like a business plan, and one with actual receipts. Say what you want about Jake Paul, but if there's one thing he is, it's a damn good businessman. UFC Seattle weigh-ins went down today at Climate Pledge Arena, and all 26 fighters made weight. Adesanya and Pyfer both had to hit 186 or under for the middleweight main event, while Grasso and Barber were capped at 126 for the flyweight co-main. Tomorrow night, it's on. Adesanya comes into this one on a 3-fight skid, and he hasn't won since the Pereira knockout almost 3 years ago. We broke the full matchup down in our last video. Pyfer is 29, dangerous, and walking in with absolutely nothing to lose. Prelims start at 5 Eastern, main card at 8, streaming on Paramount+. Let's take this all the way back to where we started. Makhachev's camp announced a done deal. Dana called it false. Rousey used a rival platform to take a shot at the same company that turned down her fight. Jake Paul said the UFC is dying, and backed that up with a card that keeps getting stronger every single week. And tomorrow, one of the most accomplished middleweights in UFC history steps into the cage in Seattle fighting to keep his place near the top. The UFC has more money, more events, and more platforms than ever before. And somehow, people on the outside keep finding new ways to pressure it, while the people in charge still can't seem to agree on dates, money, or who's actually retired. So make sure you're subscribed, because after Adesanya versus Pyfer tomorrow, there's going to be plenty to talk about.